Good morning. We can start our public hearing, but before I invite the witness to come in, I'd like to say something. I received a letter this morning from the Director of Public Prosecutions. It was addressed to me. It told us that the executive-legislature relationship should be looked into vis-a-vis this hearing. I'd like to ask the legal advisor to explain briefly what this letter is about and why it has anything to do with this public hearing. Thank you, Chairman. This letter was dated the 24th of May, 2013. It is from the Director of Public Prosecutions of the Department of Justice to this Public Accounts Committee. It says that it would like to remind us that the ICAC is now conducting a criminal investigation into Mr. Timothy Tong. This letter says it understands that constitutionally this PAC has a responsibility, but it also seeks to point out that according to Basic Law Article 63, the DOJ is also constitutionally responsible for prosecution. And so we have different roles, it says. And this letter from the administration reminds us that when the PAC conducts its hearings, it should attempt not to affect criminal investigations. I think that is briefly what the letter is about. Members, the legislature here also has its own responsibility. And that is, we should conduct meetings and public hearings on the basis of value for money studies done by the Director of Audit. So we'd like to look at the issue from the angle of value for money studies. And we therefore go in a different direction from the criminal investigation of the administration. But as to whether we would touch upon the same issues, well, I think so. I think we will. So members, when you ask questions, please exercise caution. Always come back to the value for money study scope. This is the first point. Second point, do not give your personal opinion, and also do not state what you would conclude from the hearing. We are just having a fact-finding session. We like to get to the truth of the matter. Later on, when we will formulate our opinion, it will be a collective opinion that will be contained in our report. So at this public hearing, we are only going to ask questions on the value for money study, and we like to know how things happened. So please be careful when you ask questions, so we do not cross the line. But sometimes it is difficult, I know. It is difficult for you to tell the difference, but I will remind you if you might be crossing the line, and you might want to explain why you want to ask a certain question, and then I will decide what to do, all right? Yes, Mr. Alan Leong? Chairman, I'd like to thank the DPP for his letter to the PAC dated the 24th of May 2013. I thank him for telling us his views. But here, through you, Chairman, I'd like to tell the DPP that we know where we stand. And as you said very clearly, Chairman, our stance has always been that we look at this from the value for money study angle. And that is according to report number 60 of the Director of Audit, whether we have spent money that is worth our effort in fighting corruption. And Chairman, you were right in issuing the reminder. The only thing that we have to remind ourselves is not to come to a conclusion during the gathering of evidence stage, because the conclusion will not be reached by us as individual members, but by the entire PAC, and that would be done behind closed doors. Chairman, whether Mr. Timothy Tong will be subject to criminal prosecution, that is still unknown. If after the Commissioner of the ICAC and his team have completed their investigation, if indeed criminal prosecution is pondered, then when we write our conclusion in our report and when it should be published, so that it will not have a bearing or it will not influence the judgment of the court, then that can be decided later. So actually, this letter, in my view, does not affect our questioning today. Does any other member who would like to speak? Paul Chair. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you. That is, since that is the case, I would also have to be particularly careful in my opening remarks and my questions. Hong Kong is a very small community and there is already wide coverage in the press. Well, that is for the public to comment, but as the legislature, we are a very important organization and we must be careful that when we speak, when we question, we should not have any effect on possible future criminal prosecution. Well, we don't know whether there will be a jury. If there is a jury, it will be particularly important. And also at the district courts, of course, the judges would make their own professional judgment. But no matter what, I think this is a good reminder. Actually, last time there were questions asked where some people who had to answer the questions were in an embarrassing situation and their credibility was called into doubt. So we like to exercise caution, and also, Chairman, maybe you should exercise your discretion, and also the LA sitting beside you should also help us. It is not that we fear anything, but we must be clear about our own powers. Mr. Wong Yok Man. Thank you, Chairman. The executive is accountable to the legislature, and Hong Kong is an independent, has an independent judiciary. This is common sense for members who are here. As a public hearing, when we ask questions, well, between a question and an answer, it is possible that because of this interaction, maybe there is interaction between the one asking the question and the one giving the answer, and the people might have the misunderstanding, or we might give people the misconception that we are interrogating someone. However, we are not interrogating anyone. We are just fact-finding. We are doing fact-finding. So when we ask continuous and repeated questions, then does it mean that we are interrogating someone? That is for the public to decide. This is a public hearing. We have this letter from the DOJ. We should not give the people the misconception that we subject ourselves to self-censorship. I don't want the media to say we subject ourselves to self-censorship. So we should be very careful how we go about our work and not cross the line. If we do not do a good job and discharge our responsibility appropriately, the media can comment. I don't think we should repeatedly say that we must remind ourselves to be cautious. Thank you, Mr. Wang Yok Man. I will decide whether you can ask a question. Mr. Kenneth Leung. Chairman, I have read the letter from the DPP. In fact, I have had a lot of exchange with the DPP in the past. Please do not go into that. No, I'm not going into my exchanges with the DPP in the past. I just like to say that I understand his style of working. This letter is neutral in its stance. It just tells us we have to remind ourselves of certain articles in the Basic Law. It doesn't make any opinion. It is not a reminder. It is adopting a very neutral stance. It reminds us of the articles of the Basic Law. That's it. I'm sure experienced members will understand what it seeks to say. It just reminds us of the Basic Law. So we should not interpret the letter too much. Mr. Kenneth Leung, this is a public hearing. It is not just us, but we have the responsibility to tell the people of Hong Kong. Many people are watching the proceedings of this public hearing. They may not know what is happening. That is why we need to have a high degree of transparency. Since we have received that letter, we have to tell Hong Kong people what is happening and why it is happening and what our decision is, why we want to do something, why we want to decide to do something. This is how we divide our work between ourselves and the executive. I think it's important that we state it in public. And also, we will formulate our opinion in the report later. Okay, now we can start the hearing. Can we please invite the witness to come in? Today, the witness is Mr. Timothy Tong Hin-ming. There is only one witness today, and he will be bringing with him 2 or 3 lawyers. Mr. Wang Yuk-man will be the first to ask a question, then Ng Leung Sing, and then Kenneth Leung, and then Alan Leung. So Wang Yuk-man, Ng Leung Sing, Kenneth, and then Alan. Gary Chan, and then what about Paul Chair? Are you going to ask a question? Well, I'll stand in line. Okay, so you will ask questions in that order, all right? Good morning, Mr. Timothy Tong. Welcome to the hearing. You have been summoned here. You are not invited as you were last time. So according to Cap 382, we have summoned you here, and I'd like to ask our legal advisor to tell you your rights and also your responsibilities. Thank you, Chairman. A witness who is summoned here according to the legislation here will have the following rights, which are in Cap 382, Legislative Council Powers and Privileges Ordinance. Anyone who is ordered to come before a committee here to give oral evidence or to submit any papers under that ordinance will enjoy the rights under Sections 14 and 16 of the ordinance. They will have those powers and privileges. As for their responsibilities, the witness, if he is at such a meeting of the committee and also when he answers questions of the committee, And also with regard to the penalties meted out, these are in sections 17 and 18 of the ordinance. In this regard, I believe Mr. Tong, in our letter sent to you dated the 20th of May 2013, would have received the text of Cap 382. And also in page 2 of the appendix, we have listed the responsibilities and also the rights of witnesses. Moreover, I'd like to add one point. In Cap 382, the protections and exemptions only apply to the proceedings of the committee. All members, including members of the PAC or not, should avoid express any views on the public hearing at forums outside the public hearing. I'd also like to remind the members of the public and media attending the hearing today that they would not be protected by Cap 382 if they divulge any evidence given at the hearing outside the proceedings of the hearing. In this regard, members of the public and the media are advised to take legal advice where necessary on their own legal liability. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Tong. According to Cap 382 and Section 11, you will be examined on oath. Would you please now stand, and I will now administer an oath. Would you be using the oath or the affirmation? Yes, which one? Affirmation? Yes, Chairman, I will make an affirmation. I, Timothy Tong Hin-ming, solemnly, sincerely, and truly declare and affirm that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Mr. Tong, the oath will be valid for the hearing today and on any other days as you may be required to appear before this committee. Does any member have to declare interest? I do not see anyone having to declare interest. Mr. Tong, you are accompanied by 3 lawyers. But you cannot talk to Mr. Tong unless and until Mr. Tong has sought my consent. You should not pass him slips of paper to teach him how to answer questions. I hope you will cooperate with us, or else we will not allow you to stay beside Mr. Tong to advise him. The hearing will start now. The first question is to be asked by Mr. Wang Yuk-man because at the last hearing he stood in line but he did not have the chance to ask a question. Mr. Wang Yuk-man, you have 10 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. We'd like to refer to this Director of Audit's report number 60, Chapter 7, Preventive Education and Enlisting Public Support Against Corruption. We are relying on the relevant contents of this report in order to take evidence from this witness. Much of the report would be the subject of evidence gathering with the incumbent commissioner and his staff. But since today we have issued a summon to order Mr. Tong to appear here, I will therefore direct my questions to Mr. Tong to gather evidence with regard to the parts of the report relating to him, and this is in para 321 to 326. This is related to him. Last time, we asked him about the storage of wine, and last time he chose not to give an answer.
So I'd like to follow up on this occasion, and I hope Mr. Tong can respond truthfully. Now, on the last occasion, our colleagues asked Mr. Tong. He needed to respond to the procurement of table wine. So you have the information on hand that during your term as ICAC Commissioner, could you refer us to the document, Mr. Wang? It's the ICAC confidential report. It's all published in the newspapers. It's not secret anymore. Well, that's a separate issue, but which document are you referring to? Could you enlighten us? If you can't find it, please continue with your questioning. Well, I have written down my question. Everybody had asked the question, but there was no response. Gen 3, Appendix 15. Gen 3, Appendix 15. Please refer to the document. This is a document dated 15th of May, and we have questions regarding to the storage of wine. So if you have a copy of it, you can refer to it. We see that in this paper, we are interested that in the previous commissioners, including Mr. Lo Fan Jiufan, Lei Xiugong, during their terms were shorter than yours. You had a 5-year term, and as ICAC Commissioner, the stock of wine, not only was there an increase in table wine, even white wine had an extraordinary increase, at least compared to the previous commissioners. They did not store hard liquor, the spirits, the Mao Tai that is referred to in the newspapers. So my question is, after taking up the post, there was an increase in procurement of wine. Who made that instruction? Mr. Tong? Regarding to the social relations department, the storage up to 2011, whether it is hard liquor or wine, there was an increase. I cannot recall from memory the when instructions were issued. I don't want to waste time. I'm dealing with this. Please, he doesn't have to. He just needs to respond to my question. Mr. Wang Yongman, please comply with the order. I will rule on how the witness will answer. Please raise your hand if you have any questions. Chairman, I wish to have a simple response. I already had provided a background. I just need it. This is not a court. I just have 10 minutes. You already spent a few minutes to ask your question. He has the right to answer. You can respond. The procurement might have different procedures, but I do not rule out that if my signature was required, then I believe the procurement of such spirits and wine, basically, I would have approved. But whether the instruction arose from me or whether it was approved by me, since it occurred on different occasions, okay, he already answered my question. So you were aware, yes. So if you were aware, then why do you need to purchase and store so much hard liquor? You can respond. Chairman, regarding the quantity, I had no opportunity to review the quantity. I cannot state the quantity. I just want to point out that purchasing this hard liquor, I was aware of the purchase. The purpose was to entertain. Guess, Chairman, my question was not answered. My question was very clear. Why previous commissioners did not even purchase one bottle, and in your 5-year term, you continuously purchase this hard liquor, and you were aware of these purchases. You approved of it. You said you would not rule out it needed your approval. So why do you have to purchase so much hard liquor? Tell me the reason. Just now, Mr. Tong, you can respond directly and simply. We're just seeking the truth. The truth, the facts are already listed in the documents. You said you were aware of the purchases. And if you refer to page 94, the previous commissioners had not purchased any hard liquor at all. So it's not just a matter of your cognizance. You can explain to legislators why did you purchase that? Was there a need? This is not a court. Why did you have that consideration at the time? Could you just enlighten us? Yes. The intention was to entertain. Why do we purchase different types of liquors and spirits to entertain? Because at that time, for entertaining at the time, the frequency, according to my recollection, the number of receptions increased. The range of increase was rather large, and the reason behind was that the guests and that we were entertaining and the habits at the time in 2006, the guests were from mainland. Chairman, in 2006 there was no hard liquor. You weren't even the ICAC commissioner. Allow me, can I respond? In 2006, there was only red and white wine, 24 or 36 bottles. Could you respond to Mr. Wang Man's question? That if you refer to the paper on page 94, I would like to have a separate question. He has to answer your question. My response is, in 06 and 07, I have some supplemental information, if you allow me the time to provide the information. In 06-07, it was quite, there were more frequent and intimate contacts in the beginning of 06-07. The increase was just starting. At the time, aside from table wine, there weren't other wines and spirits, but in the coming years, we had hard liquor and other types of spirits. Second question, I'll follow up with the other questions in the second round. I'd like to ask Mr. Tong, when did you accept NPC nomination during your term? The CPPCC nomination, because Mr. Tong said that in the UN Convention Against Graft, China, the NPC on the 27th of October 2005 had signed the convention, and Mr. Tong said China was a signatory to the UN Convention, and since they were a signatory to the UN Convention Against Graft, then there were more contacts with the mainland, and therefore there was more consumption of liquor. Why is it not related? So my question is, he just needs to answer, and then I'll have a follow-up question. Well, I will not allow that question, because when he was nominated to the CPPCC, it's not relevant. Well, you disallow this question, it's problematic. because as a member of the CPPCC, if he was commissioner of ICAC, then it's very problematic. During his if his ICAC role had expired, then there was no question, there wouldn't be a problem if he was then nominated to the CPPCC. So you're now saying that since China is a signatory to the UN Convention Against Graft, then during your term as ICAC Commissioner, why would you accept such an appointment? The CPPCC is a corrupt organization. You cannot be unaware of these. A lot of those posts can be purchased. That's the reason why he consumes so much hard liquor and spirits. It's not for work, Mr. Wang Yuan. You have a lot of speaking opportunities. So I have decided I will not allow this question. I'll ask a separate question. During your term, which mainland government departments did you contact? Did you contact some prosecutorate departments? Did you contact a propaganda department? Are you referring to when he was entertaining, or his after work hours entertaining? Because we have no right to ask the ICAC commissioner, because we're now focusing on his entertainment. Well, during his term, which mainland organization did he contact? And were these the non-judicial, non-prosecutor departments? Because he will contact the prosecutor and judicial departments. I'm asking whether he had contacted non-judicial, non-prosecutor departments. Mr. Tong, you can respond to questions relating to 3.1 and all the way up to 3.2 in our report. Thank you, Chairman. Enlisting public support, Part 3 of the report. 3.21 to 3.26. That part could you provide some instructions? I can only refer you to the scope. When you entertained, the question was, who did you entertain, and are these people related to the report? They were not asking me what you were doing during your term. It's just that in this report, there's a section on enlisting public support, and under the section, which officials did you entertain? Mr. Wang was referring to these paragraphs. In 3.21, all the way to 3.26, in 3.22 we refer to 2 entertainment functions. I do not, well, within 3.21 and 3.26 we have a lot of follow-up questions, and we refer to page 94 on the stock kept by the Community Relations Department, and that leads to other questions. So these are the questions that we would like to examine from the value for money perspective. You have all of these documents. Could you confine yourself to the scope? I can just refer you to the scope. I can't lead you in answering. I had contacted the mainland liaison office, and I had met officials there from the liaison office. and you referred to the Public Security Bureau, Prosecutorate, and there was a very important... No, Chairman, of course, I'm aware you will contact the PSB. I'm asking for non-PSB, non-judicial, non-prosecutor government officials. Did you contact them? Did you meet with the Communist Party propaganda? Chairman, this is relevant. You think it's relevant. I just want to see what is related to value for money as highlighted in the report. And I will examine it from the document's perspective. I cannot take it on face value that you say it's relevant. I had ruled that he does not need to answer. He just needs to respond which meals he had provided. Well, we're talking about controlling the budget. They can meet without having meals. Chairman, I'm not going to argue. Okay, I'll follow up in the second round. Mr. Enlisting. Yes, Chairman. I would like to look at 3.21 to 3.26. And I have made reference to Gen 3. Which page are you referring to? The handwritten page 7. Liaison with the regional, international, and mainland liaison. He said that he had met with visitors, he had organized competitions. Yes, could you refer to page 7 in Gen 3? Handwritten page 7. Yes, I can see it. I'd like to refer that the Community Relations Department has so many visits and conferences. It says that here, since 2008, the ICAC has organized 5 thematic conferences with the Mainland Ministry of Supervision and Commission. In 2011, there were other activities as well. So, in past ICAC cases, a lot of them were mainland cases and other cases relating to other jurisdictions. So did you have to rely on the mainland liaison office to handle these cases? And did they need to provide some convenience in intelligence exchange, or even to deal with extradition? So, are you aware which regions or jurisdictions needed to visit Hong Kong frequently and required entertainment? So, from your recollection, can you provide us with... Well, Mr. Enlisting, you are now referring to page 7. There were 5 meetings. What's the relationship with the question that you're trying to ask? These 5 conferences, how are they related to your question? So aside from the 5 conferences, you had stepped up overseas visits, and there were some interaction with international organizations. So entertainment would therefore have increased. So, according to your recollection, which jurisdictions or organizations, such as the Mainland Liaison Office, did they provide assistance in dealing with the casework? Mr. Tong, Do you understand the question?
Chairman, regarding the regional, international, and mainland conferences, the 5 thematic conferences, they're organized together with the Mainland Ministry of Supervision and the Commission Against Corruption of Macau. It was in 2007, 2008, we had this annual conference. Chairman, I'd like to point out that the policy of having exchanges with the mainland wasn't formulated by me. From record, my predecessor published the 06-07 annual report, the ICAC annual report, which also highlighted that. Mr. Tong, will you answer Mr. Leung Sing's question? Time is precious here. Otherwise, I'll have to invite you here on more occasions. So will you address the question direct? Well, the 5 conferences are annual conferences. Mr. Well, will you focus your reply on the liaison officers in liaison office involvement, or the ministry's involvement? Well, the Ministry of Supervision has a representative based in Hong Kong at the bureau level. Mr. Leung Sing, well, there are many activities that involve overseas duty visits, and I'm sure that there would be a reciprocal visits to Hong Kong as well. Now, 3.21 to 3.26, the entertainment involved the consumption of wine and hard liquor. Is it true that some guests would require the consumption of these beverages? That's why you try to meet their demand. Mr. Tong, well, we consider the background of the guests, we consider the ranking, and also the protocol for reception. Mr. Ng, now these international conferences, what about the local consulates? Did you liaise or make similar arrangement for local consulates based in Hong Kong in the same way as you did with the liaison office? Mr. Tong, from recollection for the first and second year, I did invite the consul generals in Hong Kong. We had a lunch reception. We also had a dinner reception. It was held on an annual basis. Mr. Leung Sing, let me move into specifics. 3.21 for all these entertainment arrangements. For the 2 dinners highlighted in the Director of Audit's report, 3.22, A and B, if I may put this to Mr. Tong. Now the bill was split. The entertainment may happen at 2 different places on the same night, and it should be considered as one single entertainment, but the bill was split up into 2. Did you have any justification for this, or did you ever consider whether it is a proper arrangement? Or how did you make the decision? Mr. Ng, well, many people didn't read the report, and you talked about splitting the bills. In fact, they went to 2 different restaurants, and they were entertaining the same people, and there were 2 bills involved. Yes, one was for the dinner. The other one, according to the information at the time, the other one was for the dessert, for the Chinese dessert for the guests. And there were 2 bills, and I get the feeling that there was one single entertainment, but you entertained them at 2 different places, so that's why you had the 2 bills. And you didn't consider them as one single entertainment. You had you presented 2 bills. Now, as Commissioner, did you look into that, or did you take any decision in this regard? Mr. Tong, well, my understanding is that with regard to this billing arrangement, it is within it falls within the regulation. And that was my understanding at the time as Commissioner. Normally, these kind of billings wouldn't be cleared with me, and colleagues might ask me about this. It was not until the audit report was published that I became aware of that. I didn't know about that at the time. I wouldn't think that that would be something approved of by the Director of Audit. Mr. Ng, well, in the past, if the bill exceeded the prescribed amount during your tenure as Commissioner, in instances of exceedances beyond the $450, how many instances, or were there many instances where exceedances occurred a lot, and did you exercise your power properly? Mr. Tong, yes, there were quite a lot. In each entertainment, there would be a file, and all the background of the individuals would be included, all the arrangements and the venues of the entertainment and so on would be included. Now we would include a couple of menus there, and there would be an official who would countersign, and I would give the approval. Now there were not that many. Now, if we had 4 or 5 people, we shouldn't hit the limit. Now, in the document, there is mention of $400 or so dollars. I think there should be some margin, and we should really go beyond the limit. I mean, they may consume some soft drinks and so on. Mr. Ng, is it your understanding that the alcoholic beverages should not be included in the expenditure? Mr. Tong, that was my understanding at the time, and I do believe that the ICAC does have clear accounting. Chairman, now if we cannot overcome the hurdle of the Director of Audit, then the civil servants would not dare to do it. Now, if the audit doesn't approve of that, they wouldn't normally do it. Now, how many years have you been a civil servant for? Before you were Commissioner, I remember that. I've been a civil servant for close to 35 years. The ICAC commissioner is a public officer. I wasn't a civil servant at that time. Well, when you were a civil servant, you knew that there were regulations regarding the ceiling for entertainment, $450. And I'm sure the civil servants, and not as high ranking as you were, would understand that as well. And when you were commissioner of the ICAC, why didn't you have any vigilance about the ceiling of $450? Or did you think that you could go beyond the limit? In the light of your experience, it's not a question of whether the Director of Audit will approve of that. Now, the ICAC does have all these regulations as well. Mr. Tong. Chairman, I'd like to seek some clarification here. As far as I understand, the ICAC at the time wasn't aware that we couldn't purchase the alcoholic beverages. Now, we explained that already. The alcoholic beverages were purchased for entertainment. It would be more expensive to purchase the alcohol in the restaurants. The ICAC wasn't sufficiently alert about this. The director didn't refer to this as being against the law. It means that it was a gray area. By Mr. Tong. Mr. Raymond Wong referred to page 94 in Gen 3. Now, during your tenure, you purchased a lot of hard liquor and wine, and that cost money. And when you entertain guests, you had to use these beverages. And you entertain the guests with hard liquor, guests of different ranking. Why were you not vigilant about the $450 ceiling? Now, when we draft the report, we look at every single thing during the inquiry. So I think you have to be sufficiently clear in your reply. You cannot say that you were not sufficiently vigilant at the time. You gave the approval for the procurement of the wine and hard liquor, and you went beyond the limit. And it's not a question of how much we are talking about. And I think you have to be held responsible for that. You cannot say that you were not aware, you were not clear about the situation. And I think this is really shocking to hear what you say. Can you address Mr. Ng's question, please? Chairman, my understanding is that we purchased the alcoholic beverages separately for entertainment purposes. Now, should this amount be applied to the limit of $450 ceiling? If we do, and if we go beyond the $450 ceiling, would it not be permitted? The Director of Audit said that this is a gray area. I was aware that this was not permitted. Mr. Tong, that's why I said, that's why I asked you how long have you been a civil servant for? Within the civil service, was this something that was permitted? You were in charge of the customs and excise, and I mean, you have enormous power, and you have, I mean, when you were civil servant, did you do the same thing? My understanding is that if we separate the bills, it was not permitted. Kenneth. Mr. Tong, Gen 3, page 95. Now that's the list of 94, page 94. Yes, I'm referring to 95. Yes, 95. That's about the stock of wine at CRD. 0910, you procured a lot of table wine and hard liquor. Now, there are some asterisks against certain numbers. 18 wine and 6 bottles of Multi were bought on behalf of the administration branch. So other than the CRD, the AMD, the administration branch, also consumed wine and hard liquor. Is that correct? Yes. Thank you. Question number 2. Other than the wine stock in the CRD, did you have any wine stock in the administration branch? Mr. Tong. From recollection, in the administration branch, there was. I am not terribly clear about the details. Yes, you've addressed the question. Mr. Tong, may I refer you to Gen 10? That's the document given to us yesterday, page 30. Annex 14. Have you read this document, Mr. Tong? Before you came to this hearing, did you read this document? Annex 14. Yes, I can see that. Annex 14. As of July 1st, 2012, wine 18, hard liquor 8.5 bottles. These are leftovers, aren't they? Well, as a matter of fact, there are some confusions regarding the stock. The CRD may procure the wine for the admin branch or the other way around. May I ask the Secretariat to get hold of the purchase of wine for the administration branch from 0304 to 12 to 13. Now, I'm done with the wine stock. Mr. Tong, may I move on to the wine, albeit not the stock? If I may refer you to Gen 3, page 93, Annex 14. Para 2. Now, in your testimony, you said this already. Now, why you had to purchase this wine and hard liquor? Compared with ordering wine at the dining place, such practice was more economical. Now, this is what is said in the paper. Can you confirm that? Mr. Tong? Now, this is the consideration for doing it. Well, I think that this is a reasonable consideration. Thank you. Kenneth. Page 94 in the same document, Gen 3, page 94.
This shows that there were 12 lunches and dinners stretching between 09 and 2010. In your accounts, there was no inclusion of wine or hard liquor. There were 12 occasions when this was done. I'd like to ask you this question. If you say that purchasing the wine in advance is more economical, then all restaurants would see a deficit if everybody does that. Then why is it that when you used wine, there was no corkage charged by the restaurants? This is a very pertinent question. Why is it that there was no corkage charged? The question is, Mr. Tong, did you have a special treatment from the restaurants? I did not say that, Chairman. You said that. Well, if you ask that question, please ask a question directly. Chairman, I had some considerations. It was better for you to say that. My understanding is, first of all, Chairman, given my work at that time, I would not try to find out the practices at restaurants. My understanding was if you were a loyal customer, very often you would have the corkage waived. And some restaurants might be happy to do it because they wanted to retain your business. My understanding is that everything must be done within the permitted amounts. And as I understood it, my colleagues were trying to observe protocol, especially if the guests were at a certain ranking. And apart from the meals themselves, they also gave consideration to the venues. And from the angle of expenditure, now I really don't know. Maybe corkage was waived or a very small corkage was charged. And that might have been a condition in the choice of venues. Usually colleagues would not just choose one venue. They would compare, say, 3 venues. Thank you, Mr. Tong. Kenneth. I'd like to tell you that in the market, the corkage might be between $100 to $300 per bottle. You should know this, Mr. Chairman. You know this very well, I think. Mr. Tong, if you were just any individual going into a restaurant and you hold a feast or you have a meal there, of course, if you are a loyal customer and if the corkage is waived, that is understandable. But here in your accounts, you are talking about the spending of public money. And you are a public officer when you used the services of these restaurants. The manager or the boss of the restaurants. Now, maybe I take it that you didn't know if they indeed gave you some discount or they gave you free service in any way. Were you aware that you were using public money and you were holding public office, discharging public duties? And if the boss of the restaurant gave you some discount, Chairman, recently, I remember it was last month where there was a case at the court that there was a public officer. Please don't go into that, please. Okay. I'm asking you whether that occurred to you, Mr. Tong, when you did this. Your awareness, did you have that awareness? Because starting with you, a lot of wine was purchased. Let us look at it from this perspective. Other commissioners did not do it. But you bought so much wine and you had to consume it. And you took it to different restaurants. So please answer the question. Since I did not negotiate with the restaurants, my impression is that now I'm not sure. I am not sure whether they discussed it with me, but my feeling is if the restaurant was expensive and if there were a lot of requirements and if it could not meet our expectation, then that venue would not be chosen. And separately, if there were special concessions and they were available just because we had that public office, then that would absolutely not be correct. But if it was for the promotion of business, And if they had wanted to get your business, it could be a special treatment or concession. And if they offer that kind of condition to get your business, that could be acceptable. Thank you, Mr. Tong. Just one more question, please, Chairman. It's a very brief one. Mr. Tong, you said that starting from Mrs. Fanny Law, when she was the commissioner, you already strengthened or stepped up liaison with the mainland, and so you developed in that direction. Mr. Tong, could I refer you to Jan 10, the paper given to us just yesterday by the incumbent commissioner, page 14, Annex 6. Can you find it, Mr. Tong? Page 14. The Secretariat, can somebody offer help? The lawyers, please do not have any discussion with Mr. Tong. Page 14, handwritten, page 14, Annex 6. This is about a breakdown of $4.73021 million labeled as one-off requirement in 2008 to 2009. Yes, $4.73021 million. The first entry, Mr. Tong, you mentioned that you had 5 seminars jointly organized with the mainland. This one is called the Conference on Corporate Governance in the Financial Sector. Expenditure, $1.844 million. Was this one of those 5, Mr. Tong? Yes, because conferences were major activities, and I can remember them. With regard to integrity building in the financial sector, I do remember there was this conference, and this is mainly because it was organized in Hong Kong. It was in a special environment because it was right after the financial tsunami. I don't remember the number of participants, but it was a major conference. Hundreds of directors and high-ranking officials, and also the controlling agencies came. And if I remember correctly, the Hong Kong Monetary Authority, of course, also sent people here. SFC, the SFC head was also here. Okay, thank you. I would ask my questions in the next round. Thank you very much. Next, Mr. Alan Leong. Thank you, Chairman. Chairman. Last time, I already said this to the witness, that during his tenure, the ICAC received an extra $120 million. Alan, can you please help us with citing some papers? Page 17 of Gen 3, please. Annex 9. Maybe Mr. Tong can refer to it. Well, I thought he agreed to this already last time. No, we answered many questions, so please refer to papers. Annex 9. Mr. Tong, as you can see it, in 0708, the annual funding was $701.2 million. When you left in 2011-2012, the annual funding was $824.1 million. And the difference is $129 million in a matter of 5 years. Can you confirm that point? Yes, this is what is shown from the figures. I did not do the sums, but I believe the member had done the calculations. Alan, also in the audit report, we could see that in Table 1, page 10 of the Chinese version, or page 12 of the English version, the OCs reached by the CRD. Within your tenure, the numbers of contact actually dropped instead of increased. In 2008, 922 OCs were contacted by the CRD. In 2012, 779. So there was a drop in the figures. This is what is in Table 1 of the audit report, Mr. Tong. Could I please ask the chairman to allow me to ask for the page number? Page 10. I already said it. Page 10 in the Chinese version or page 12 in the English. The Secretariat, can you give some help? Sorry. Can you get somebody to sit right behind Mr. Tong to give assistance? And also, you can find the pagination at the bottom of the page. Because we were using a photocopy. All right. Just go for the pagination. This is right in the middle at the bottom of the page, page 10. I'd like to ask the witness whether he is already looking at that page. Yes. Please confirm that in 2008, it was the first year of your tenure. 922 OCs were reached by the CLD. When you left in 2012, only 779. Yes. Yes, Mr. Tong? Yes, I can see those figures. I will cite another example, or else my 10 minutes would pass very quickly. No, we can give you more time. Can I ask you to go to table 5 on page 32? Just look at the pagination and look at table 5.
就係講座、探訪。
Organizations and people reached by talks, visits, and meetings. Are you looking at the table? Table 5. Sorry, members. We will assist you. We will give you the time to find the page. Page 32 in the Chinese version or 39 in the English. You will see that in the second column, number of talks, visits, and meetings. The number was 1,507 in 2008. And then when you left in 2012, the number was 1,040. Can you see those figures, Mr. Tong? Page 32. Yes, yes. Table 5. And then the next column. Number of organizations reached. In the first year of your tenure in 2008, 529, and it dropped to 389 in 2012. Can you confirm those figures? Yes? Yes. And also, can you go to the next page? Organizations and people reached by multifaceted activities, table 6. Please look at the number of people reached. In 2008, 450,000, and it dropped to 340,000 in 2012 when you left your office. Can you confirm those figures? Yes? Yes. Please go to the next page. Table 8. Community activities with sponsorship. You can see that in 2008, number of activities with sponsorship, 38. When you left in 2012, only 20. And number of sponsors, the next column, 38 in 2008, and then 22 only in 2012. The amount of sponsorship in 2008, $3.7 million, dropping to $0.9 million in 2012. Chairman, at this stage, I think those tables would suffice. Okay, please get to your question. Chairman, according to this director's report number 60, we should take a look from the value for money angle to see whether public money spent on the ICAC, which is increasing by the year, and whether the anti-corruption work according to the policy and whether it has been achieved. But it seems from these figures that I quoted, there is something to be desired. Now, I'd like to know where the money went, because I like to gather the facts. The money should be spent to fight corruption so that we could see some results. Now, where did the money go when it was allocated to the ICAC? Chairman, please make a ruling as to whether my question is within the value for money scope. My ruling is in the positive. Go on. But, Mr. Tong, there were a few tables quoted. Maybe he's not familiar with the tables, but as you explained, the question is over $100 million more were spent, but then the number of people reached dropped, and also the number of organizations reached also dropped. So Mr. Leong is asking whether this is a question within the value for money study scope. I think that, of course, is. Chairman, in this round, I'd like to concentrate on one thing. In Gen 10, which was given to us yesterday, Annex 9, page 1. I'd like to start with page 1. Gen 10, page 1. Mr. Leong, since Gen 10 was received only yesterday, we will allow the witness time to go through it. The others were seen before, but when it comes to Gen 10, please go slowly and lead the witness to understand your questions. I will give you more time. Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Tong, this is a table showing a breakdown of the total expenditure of the administration branch for each year from 2003-04 to 2012-13. We can see that when you assumed office in 2007, let us look at 2006-2007. At the administration branch, the total expenditure was 27181. Okay, that was the figure, 27181. And then, after you assumed office in 07-08, it shot up $43.648 million. Can you confirm that figure? Yes, I confirm the figure. And then 08, 09, 09, 2010, 2010, 11, and then 2011, 2012, and then until 2012, 13, the figures continued to go up as a whole. You left the ICAC, and in that year, the total expenditure for the admin branch reached $55.235 million. Can you confirm that figure? Mr. Tong, yes. I left at the end of June in 2013. So at least there were 3 months when the ICAC was under your leadership, right? Yes. Chairman, at the beginning, I already said that we would like to know where the $100-odd million went. That was the extra expenditure during a 5-year period. Now, the report number 60 is on preventive education and enlisting public support against corruption, but we do not see comparable results. We are asking these questions to see whether the money has been spent only on administration work. This will help us formulate our conclusions on this value for money study. This is for the chairman to rule. Mr. Tong. The member has asked many questions. Well, only two questions. He was asking you a simple question. He asked you to confirm the figures, and then he only came to his question. There was just one question. I have not asked my question. No, you asked the question. You asked whether the money went to a wrong place. No, Chairman, I was trying to explain to you what question I was going to ask. No, but you already asked the question. You said where the money went. But I can ask a more focused question because I can understand the difficulty of the witness. On page 1 here in Gen 10, there is an explanation that there were the transfer of 32 Chinese language officers and transcribers from the operations department. They were transferred to the administration branch. And at the same time, the Office of Strategic Research was established, and the staff cost was about $2 million. I will stop here.
I'd like to ask Mr. Tong, after you left the post, the administrative department costs or expenses had dropped. Mr. Tong? according to the figures, before you answer, Alan, could you say where did I had jumped ahead of my questioning in point 3 of page 1? We're looking at Annex 9, point 3 on staff expenditure. In December the same year, there was a graph research center that was established, and it commenced operations in April 2009. It came under the administration department, and this graph building research center, after you stepped down, it did not continue to exist independently. Are you aware? I'd like to clarify this point. I'm looking at it comes under the administration department, but from January 2011 to August 2012, it had been seconded under anti-graft department, and these were during my term of office. It was not after I left the post. It started in January 2011. So I'd like to ask, why would it come under anti-graft department? Chairman. Could you repeat the two questions? Let's start with the first question. First question. Why was it transferred to anti-graft department? That's the first question. The CPD, the Center for Anti-Corruption Studies, it had grown for some time. I do have some recollection. It had developed to a stage where professional standards could be developed. Administration and anti-graft, put simply, the differences are administration is management and anti-graft focuses on graft. So then why in 2009 till August 2012, why was it why did it come under the administration department? It was my intention that prior to 2009 there was a very long period of time where we deliberated how to handle administrative matters. We had considered different options, and after commencement of the Anti-Corruption Studies Center, we had a expert manager. He had investigation background. He was able to develop the study center and with the assistance of colleagues, and I think prior to 2011 we had assessed the overall situation, and if the study center it could be maintained under the administration department, but there weren't opportunities for further breakthroughs, so this was an important consideration. Who was this manager? The first officer Jerry Osborne. Jerry Osborne. Can I divulge his background? Is it necessary? He was an officer serving in Hong Kong? Yes. He was seconded. He was an ICAC staff member. So aside from Mr. Osborne, we see the Center of Anti-Corruption Studies also had other staff. Yes. What other staff members did you have? Because of limited time, let's ask this question. We can ask the ICAC for information. Gen 10 would contain the information. I need to recall the information. I'm not sure if you're referring to Annex 18, Appendix 18, page 36. Are you referring to 36? Does it assist you? For example, Mr. Osborne, where can we find him in this table? Have you there were 6 staff members, 1 senior ICAC officer, that's Jerry Osborne, the chief staff officer, we had also 2 staff. We also have a professional grade librarian and a PS2 personal secretary 2 and handling administrative work. Because of time constraints, I'll focus on my interested areas. In the financial year 2010 to 2011, there were 7 staff members, where it says you add 1 legal research officer and 1 senior consultant. So who are these 2 people? I can respond, but I have an important point that I'd like to raise. Legislators had said that they referred to table 1 to 5, 6, 7. The figures came down. The number of there are some areas I disagree. Could I respond? He just asked you to confirm the figures. There's lots of time to go back to that. So, addition of 1 legal research officer and 1 senior consultant. I can't remember the date, but during that time frame, first of all, the legal research officer, the appointment was made under consensus. There was a discussion between department heads. There were a series of reasons, including I'm aware I can. You don't need to divulge confidential information. We had considered this person, where he would be posted. We also considered the person's strengths, background, abilities, and he could undertake a special job. The senior consultant This candidate was identified through a lengthy process. This person had to be familiar with overseas, and he also had to have international vision. He also had to be familiar with past Hong Kong work, and also familiar with mainland circumstances. And this person was recruited. This person had studied. You don't need to please maintain order. You can you can queue for your question turn. This is not a council meeting. You cannot speak out of turn. Please continue. So these two posts were only maintained for 1 year. And who was appointed? The legal research officer and senior consultant. Who can you identify? Do you want a name? If you have a difficulty, you can explain where the difficulty lies. No difficulty. The first person was ICAC staff member, Francis Sum. And the second person, Professor Yun Pak Sum. Yun Pak Sun, he's a mainland resident. We're not talking about value for money and anti-graft. Well, would we benefit from the money that was spent? So I'd like to ask Mr. Yun, as a mainland professor, why would he be able to contribute to anti-graft work in Hong Kong? The people we recruit, we have professional qualifications first. They need to have a lot of knowledge and experience. This is an important consideration. Second, they need to understand the operations of ICAC Hong Kong. They have to have published literature and papers, and I repeat, over the years, we had more frequent exchange with the mainland, and I just want to clarify. This Professor Yun, how much was spent to retain his services? I don't recall the specific figures at the time. What about the grade instead of a specific figure? It wasn't a grade A. It should be a grade B. Well, what's the range of grade B? $70,000, $80,000. But the condition was, it was a package deal. No benefits. So usually the civil service remuneration includes benefits, medical, ICAC staff also have housing. Was it tailor-made for him? It was for the consultant. It was for the post. Yes, I understand. I'd just like to ask this Professor Yoon, what did he do? This Professor Yoon, he did research analysis on the ICAC's work on the global front, and how did we rank, and how should we promote ICAC work, especially in areas with scope for development. As a matter of fact, Professor Yoon had also expounded on colleagues his views on anti-graft work. For example, the UN Anti-Graft Convention. He's an expert on that. He would also talk about the mainland system. It's because we have a lot of contact with the mainland. When we have cases related to the prosecutor, that you don't need to explain that much. I'd like to point out that we don't need Professor Yoon to tell you that the Hong Kong's ranking is much higher than the mainland China. Hong Kong ranked 14th and the mainland ranked 80 in 2011. So I'm surprised that you would find a mainland expert to Hong Kong to help us with anti-graft. So I think I just give you another opportunity to explain. I think he's trying to give you an opportunity to explain why you recruited a mainland expert. Global ranking low, it doesn't mean that we don't have quality scholars, and vice versa. From a high global ranking country, doesn't mean we can recruit a suitable candidate. And this candidate, our requirement is that he provides services relevant to our work. I've already spent 30 minutes. I'll continue in the second round. Yes, we can ask the procedures in ICAC. Next we have Chan Hakan. Thank you, Sharon. The figures indicate that during Mr. Tong's term, the department expenditure went up by 11 million. We looked at that before. I'd like to refer to Gen 10, page 6. Page 6. My questions are related to the General Department's expenditure. I just want to see, is it spent on graft busting? The question is related to duty visits outside Hong Kong. You see in page 6, starting from 0607, there were 21 trips. And during Mr. Tong's term, the ICAC, from 0708 to 2011, there were 96 trips. In 2012, the visits came down to 12. So looking at the figures, during Mr. Tong's term, 1/3 of the trips, 33 occasions, were led by Mr. Tong, and his expenditure directly related to Mr. Tong ranged from 430,000 to $1 million. So could the witness tell us, in your 33 visits, which jurisdictions did you visit? Were it mostly mainland or Asia, North America, Europe? What were the purposes of your visits? Were these regular visits?
Mr. Tong? Well, the question is about the places of these duty visits. They're not mainly the mainland of China. Mainland, other regions, and also international community, we all visited them. Where did you go? Can you address the question? We visited the mainland, Beijing. There were 96 visits. Was it 40 times to Beijing, 30 times to the US, or what? Can you address the question, please? Please do not dwell on the principles and so on. I have to go back to the record, Chairman. I've left the ICAC. I can only work by recollection. I mean, it would help. It would be helpful if a table can be presented to me. Mr. Chen, well, on page 6 from the document there, perhaps we can ask for more information from the ICAC. Well, it's his choice whether he would like to answer or not. Mr. Chen, well, for the 96, 63, I don't have to know where they went because they were not led by Mr. Tong himself. I'm referring to the 33 visits, 1/3 of them, they were headed up by Mr. Tong. You don't have to remember every last detail. Can you tell us where you've been and what did you do? Well, the question is very clear. Well, I can't give you all the minute details. We visited the mainland. Yes, we did. Many visits, quite a lot. Beijing was the key place to visit because we had 2 corresponding agencies there. Since 2006, we took the initiative to invite guests from different provinces. We started with Guangdong, and then we extended to the whole nation. And we had the corresponding agencies in different provinces. If I may put it this way, we had the seminars, we had talks. I visited Shanghai, the College of Administration. We visited the corresponding agencies, the provinces. We engage in talks and seminars. There is a regional liaison arrangement. The ICAC has a very good reputation. I consider the 5 nations in ASEAN. I know that Indonesia would very much like to. Yes, that's it, Mr. Tong. Mr. Chen, when Mr. Tong mentioned the mainland and Asia, what about the US and the UK and Europe? In these 33 delegations, was it absolutely necessary for you to be there, Mr. Tong? For the U.S., I didn't make any visit in my capacity as Commissioner, not North America. I've been to Europe a number of times. Now for Europe, we'd like to get in touch with the European Union, representing 27 countries. We would like to get in touch with this anti-fraud organization in Europe. So was it absolutely necessary for you to be there? In most cases, I think that I had to be there. Well, I don't have the record in front of me. I'm not quite sure, but in most of the cases, we were invited or we had these annual meetings on a reciprocal basis. Now, for the 33 overseas duty visits, did you suggest any particular places that you wanted to visit, or were you involved in the planning of the itinerary? Yes, itinerary planning, Mr. Tong. Please answer from memory. I'm trying to recall. Basically, I would suggest a list of people to be visited. Well, you wouldn't know until you are there. Well, they may have the fourth ranking, the fifth ranking person meeting us. Well, would you pick and choose the places? And then you mentioned the number of the kind of people you would like to meet. Well, in Beijing, it's your choice. Well, we have to visit Beijing. Why do you have to visit Beijing? We have an annual meeting. It's an annual meeting. There are 33 visits. How many visits involved Beijing? At least five. At least 5 of the visits involved Beijing, because there was a meeting of the top controlling officer. For the others, I was involved in the planning. I hope that the ICAC would give us further information regarding the 33 visits led by Mr. Tong himself. Will you bear with me for 5 more minutes? Yes, also about the general department expenditure. I understand that the disciplined services would include the presentation of souvenirs and so on in the GDE. What paper are you referring to? I think we can go back to Gen 3, 22, page 22, 22 or 42. Because I'm going to ask about the standing order. I don't think the witness will need to refer to the paper about the Commissioner's standing orders. Well, for presentation of souvenirs and the exchange of gifts and so on, that would be included in the GDE, General Departmental Expenses. Now, during your tenure, Mr. Tong, for presentation of souvenirs and so on, did you charge them to the General Departmental Expenses? Mr. Tong? As far as I know, yes. But in some cases, we need the souvenirs for publicity and so on. But normally it is charged as GDE. Yes, for the presentation of gifts and souvenirs. Did you give any instruction to your subordinates about the kind of souvenirs to be presented? Mr. Tong. Well, as a general rule, when major events are held, we have the liaison office, the liaison division, that would make the arrangement. And then all the details of the event would be submitted to me for approval with recommendations and so on. But the major decision was mine, Mr. Chen. From Mr. Tong's recollection, did he present any souvenirs in the integrity activities? Yes, we did. Now, if you present any souvenirs that had nothing to do with integrity, why did you have to present it? Well, will you put the question again? Well, please hear Mr. Chen out first. My question is, did Mr. Tong present any souvenirs that had nothing to do with the ICAC work? And the answer, yes. Yes, I misheard you. Sorry, I got it wrong. Right, please. From my recollection, for the presentation for the souvenirs that we presented, we did so on a reciprocal basis. But would I reveal each and every piece of souvenir to ascertain whether it has to do with the publicity work? I wouldn't be as cautious as that. What do you mean? It means that I don't rule out some possibilities that some souvenirs may not be directly relevant to the event. But basically, it is about the liaison work. Are you happy with the reply, Mr. Chen? Well, I can't help it, Chairman. Will you follow up, though? You can't help it, but will you follow up? Well, if souvenirs are presented to you, you would reciprocate normally, according to the Commissioner's standing orders. If it is below $500, you can retain it. This is sufficiently clear. Well, if it is edible, you would consume it. Otherwise, you would use it for lucky draw and so on at the Commission. Now, if you received any souvenirs in your capacity as a Commissioner, what would you do, Mr. Tong? Well, there is an arrangement. When the souvenirs, when the gifts are received, it would be received personally, but afterwards the gift would be kept for follow-up. By that I mean all the gifts received by the delegation would be handled in accordance with procedures. Mr. Chen, will you explain why you're putting a question like this? How is it relevant to value for money? I understand we're trying to get it. Well, this is relevant, Chairman. The kind of souvenirs or gifts should be reciprocal, should be more or less on the same level. And these have to do with expenditure. I'd like the witness to confirm one point. Now, when you received the souvenirs and gifts, did you handle them in accordance with the Commission's standing orders? Mr. Tong. Yes. Can I say something more? Well, you don't have to. Well, the honourable member mentioned reciprocal. Well, that's his personal comment. The question was whether you handled the gifts and souvenirs in accordance with the rules and regulations. Did you keep some of them? And of course, I couldn't do it. Paul? Chairman, thank you. I think we need to take a break for 10 minutes after Paul. Chairman, thank you. Before I put the question, I'd like to follow up on Mr. Chen's question. If I may refer you to Gen 10, Annex 3, page 6. Just a moment ago, Mr. Tong, in answer to the question, mentioned that he was involved in deciding who to meet during these overseas visits. What about the places to be visited? Would you offer any input? Yes, I would offer input, albeit not on every occasion, but I can offer my input. That other than the guest list, what about the sightseeing spots? Would you offer your input as well? Mr. Tong, from my recollection, in relation to the detailed arrangement, it would be difficult to offer any comments. But we can make a request, like if there is suggestion of certain places, then we will see whether they are related to work and whether they would that would contribute to a better understanding of the mainland situation. Paul? Now, let's say a 5-day trip, how many days would be devoted to work and how many days would be devoted not to work? Well, that's value for money, isn't it? Yes, all these overseas duty visits, I'd like to find out whether they are justified. Mr. Tong? Well, there is very little room for maneuver. What do you mean? You have to visit these places? Well, Mr. Tong, will you answer the question direct? Please do not waste any time. Please do not give us such abstract answer. Well, sometimes it is difficult to change the arrangement because you wouldn't know about the arrangement until you have set foot on the place. Paul? Well, when we pay for our package tour, we should know what places that we visit and so on. These are visits funded by taxpayers' money. Wouldn't you be concerned about how many days that would be devoted to work and sightseeing and so on? Well, what we are concerned about is what we can do, who will be visiting, and what we'll be talking about. Well, after your work has been completed, and you will pack up and go. Now the question is, for a 5-day trip, how many days will be spent on work and so on? Mr. Tong, when we make the visit, if we don't have any work to do, we should leave. Paul? Mr. Tong, from our record, that Mr. Chen mentioned 33 visits that were in which you were the leader. Now, when you led these overseas duty visits, did you confirm the itinerary to make sure that the itinerary would be appropriate before you made the visits? Mr. Tong, well, we would consider the trips if they are necessary. We will make the visit. Of course, we will consider the counterparts. Will they accompany you in some situations? Well, if you do the sightseeing, there may be someone accompanying you and so on. Paul?
若然係主席你提。
Now, if at a certain place, if there will be some sightseeing, if it is arranged by the other party, sometimes it's difficult to say no. Okay, Paul, so it was passive, you mean? Now, out of the 33 trips, of course, it will be difficult for you to remember each one of them. But Mr. Tong, please give us a hand. Do you think in any of those trips there was something mostly inappropriate? In other words, 4 days out of 5 would be spent on sightseeing, and it was difficult for you to refuse? Do you remember any such trips? Mr. Tong, we are looking at the spending of public money here. Well, in my opinion, if 4 out of 5 days and it is not devoted to work, well, I can only speak from memory. I think that is very incorrect. But did it happen? Did it happen? In my memory, no. No, it is not right. We are talking about public visits, duty visits. Well, we are very wary of the playing around with words. You say not 4 days out of 5, but what about 2 days, 3 days out of 5 days in which you went for sightseeing? Well, on certain occasions, between work sessions, some other programs might have been arranged, and we can either do one of the two things. One, you say, no, I'm not going. Then you should go back to the hotel to take a rest and prepare for the next work session. And then, secondly, I cannot say on how many occasions, but I did that. I did do that. I would say because of my age, I need a rest. But then, on other occasions, you would have to say yes. Paul? Mr. Tong, in considering whether you would lead the tours and whether you would give permission for your subordinates to go on these trips, what kind of criteria did you use, Mr. Tong? The duty visit, whether it would be needed in promoting our work. If the need is not established, we would avoid going, because if you look at the number of invitations we have received, I would say there would be 3 times of what we could handle. We would have to look at the objectives of our work and the promotion of the values we would want to promote. That would be the major consideration. And sometimes we would also like to build up a relationship. And I can give you an example. The Shanghai Municipal Procuratorate would like to establish a particularly close relationship with Hong Kong, so they proposed a mutual visit. Well, Shanghai is a big city, but of course it is not a country. Okay, fine. Paul? Thank you, Chairman. In terms of the group size, what would be the criteria? Mr. Tong, well, it depends on the need. What is important is that during that visit, what objectives could be achieved, and in very rare situations, we would also consider putting ourselves in the other's shoes. So we would allow our staff also to be in touch with high-ranking people outside Hong Kong, but it really depends on the need. Paul, Mr. Tong, do you think that in your 5 years tenure that all the duty visits made by the ICAC were in line with the criteria you outlined? I'm of the opinion yes. Mr. Tong, as you know, there is a new guideline on duty visits for the ICAC published recently, especially the group size and also the objective of visits, and that it should be as short as possible, etc. Do you think that during your tenure, those objectives were achieved or followed, Mr. Tong? Mr. Tong? What is being done at the ICAC has nothing to do with you now. So to be fair to you, you can choose to answer or not to answer. Now, of course, I have no chance to take part in the formulation of the new guideline. That is decided by the incumbent commissioner. And I do not understand the considerations behind, but I have 2 views on this. Number 1, during my tenure, the direction we took was that the mode of work and the values of the ICAC were to be promoted to the mainland and to the world. That was an established direction, and I am of the view that I did devote a lot of time and energy to it. Number two, my second consideration. I understood that it was not just Hong Kong, but more so on the mainland, that in the recent 6 to 8 months, after we have had a new term of government, so-called new term of government on the mainland, they were also tightening up control. But that has nothing to do with you. No, I thought, Chairman, no, I was asking about your own tenure. Well, during my time at the ICAC, the exchanges made, the liaison made, I think it was different from what is being done now. Paul, well, I think we all understand that according to the law, Mr. Tong, when you were the ICAC commissioner, you were only to be accountable to the chief executive. So, Mr. Tong, when you considered making a duty visit, or when you thought about making a major change in the direction of work, did you contact the CE and get his consent first? If not the CE, which department did you talk to? Yes, I would allow that question. Mr. Tong, now I wouldn't say there was any change in the direction of work, and I have read literature showing that before I assumed office, the direction of work of the ICAC was established and was made open, and that was in the ICAC annual reports. As to the work done, now please answer the question. Did you talk to the chief executive? Yes, every time. Every time there was a duty visit, I had to get the approval of the CE before I could leave Hong Kong. And after the duty visits, there were regular occasions on which we had to report to the Executive Council on the duty visits made and the results gained. Well, you are not responsible to or accountable to the Executive Council, but to the CE. However, what we did was also reported to the Executive Council. Well, that's one thing, but did you report to the CE? Yes. But then there is one more thing. The CE appointed the ACOC, which is made up of independent members, and they would have like 3 meetings a year to receive our reports. Mr. Chairman, I can also take the opportunity to say that my impression is, and I also dug up records. No, you have already answered the question. We will have an opportunity for you to speak later on, but you should just answer questions. Chairman, allow me to follow up by asking 2 more questions. On duty visits, you said that you were sure that you sought the approval of the CE first every time. I'd like to know how you did it. Is it that you would make a written application, or you would just call him up, or you would talk to him during a golf game? Well, don't talk about golf games. I'm just saying how, asking you how you did it. Mr. Tong, there was this form which would have to be submitted to the CE, who would have to sign it to say he agreed. It is in a written form. And we would fax the form to the CE. Is it that you did it every time in written form, and he also approved in written form? As far as my memory goes, yes. Were there oral applications or after the event applications? No. If you would take the trip first and in the end he would not approve it, that would not be possible and allowed. We would rather spend more time on seeking applications. It is now 11:30, and we started at 9. So next one, Mr. Wang Yukman, you would be the next one to ask questions after a break of 10 minutes. Would have to take a break of 10 minutes. We need to give the witness a break. I know you have many demands, but your demands